I'm super excited to welcome our next speakers. Yes, hey again, Nestor. I'm going to invite our next speakers. We've got Mozart and Beethoven from the Cadence team who will be going over building on Cadence, and it will be a fantastic way to get into get building on Cadence and get yourselves involved, especially if you're thinking of going for their bounty. Hey both, how are you guys doing?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Happy to be here.
Awesome. Good to see everyone in the chat and everything, GM or GN, depending on where you are in the world at the moment. Yeah, I guess pretty much the floor is yours. So whoever would like to share their screen, please go ahead and do so. And yeah, I think we can't wait to learn and get involved.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, I can kick it off from our end and share a screen and we can talk through a few things for the hackathon.
Yes.
Yeah, so just to give a quick background, Cadence is a perpetual aggregator that we're building, basically built on Canto. I guess the reason we're here and doing the workshop, we're offering a significant bounty of CAD token, like directly on the hackathon. So any product you guys make or anything built on top of Cadence or something that can help us out for the V1 we'll talk about, or, the V2 Symphony. Yeah, we're super excited to give out those bounties. We're also looking to grow our team. So another thing we're really excited about for this bounty would be, could we potentially onboard, more people we find in the community that are, like understand the space and can help us kind of build our product faster and get it shipped sooner. So that's kind of what we're looking for here. Any way we can, you can help us build Cadence or Symphony. That's, who we want to onboard and bring onto the team. So that's kind of why we're here and, what we're looking forward to bringing on. So I guess for the flow of this workshop, we can just briefly go over kind of some of our docs and stuff. Just a brief background on kind of the V1 we have running now, which maybe some of you are familiar with. And then a background on the V2, which is like an intent-centric perpetuals aggregator that we're working on now, just to give everyone kind of a background. One cool thing I did want to note is our whole company started actually in the Canto Hackathon about a year ago. So we've fully come full circle. We started in the Canto Hackathon. That's where we got our initial funding. And then from there did like our fundraise, our VC raise and everything like that within the past year. So for people looking to get started and, build companies on Canto or just in Web3 in general, this is an awesome place to get started. So I think we're a testament that you can, this place is a really good, jumping ground to launch. Cool. So let me just briefly go over some docs. I think Beethoven and I can pass it back and forth. And then we can go from there just to Q&A if you guys have any questions or anything like that on building here. So I just pulled up our docs page. This is our Git book. It's public for anyone, who would be interested in building or looking to get involved here. Let's see. So to break it down, there's the V1 and the V2. So the V1 is perpetuals aggregator or a perpetual exchange, and it's just directly on Canto. We have 3 assets listed now. We can go over to it. Let's see. Here it is here. So I'll refresh it, just make sure everything's live. Yep, so this is the V1. So this is the dashboard page. We're closing in on $300 million in volume in the past. I think we just hit week 6. So there is a lot of traction and a lot of, movement and liquidity on Canto. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, total fees so far. So yeah, a lot of traction. This is, I guess, a good thing for people to note building products on Canto. There actually is, way more money and liquidity being traded on here than I think a lot of people assume. So a pretty liquid market. These are the tokens we have traded right now for perpetuals. So obviously Canto, being that we're, in the Canto blockchain, Ethereum, Atom, and then C-Note, which for people not familiar, that's the treasury-backed stablecoin that Canto offers. So Canto has enabled a native stablecoin called Note, and this is, tracked to the dollar. C-Note is basically the yield-bearing version of this. So just from holding this token, you're basically getting yield from US Treasury bills. So way less risky than any sort of Luna type stablecoin, but you're getting kind of an intrinsic yield just by holding it. So we build this into the platform as well. it's a cool way, actually. Like, our pool is made up of note. You can see there's, yeah, like 500K of note in here. And that note is basically generating revenue for the platform. So just a way to make it more like capital efficient. There's that. This would be the earn page. So this is just a new wallet, so nothing connected here, but this is where users can provide liquidity, basically. The APRs, again, are super, super high as we're incentivizing more liquidity on the platform. And yeah, this is where you can stake the Cadence token as well, which is, live traded. It's traded on Ethereum and on the Canto markets. And then lastly, there's just like a trade page. And this is where you can basically long and short and do different actions. So yeah, the options are longing these assets we mentioned here, shorting, and then swapping. So again, pretty standard perpetual exchange. Any questions on this, feel free to drop them in the chat. But otherwise, we can talk a little bit more about Symphony, the V2, and this is where we're hoping we can get a lot more support and like engagement from the hackathon crowd. Cool. So let's go back here. Let's see. So yeah, again, this just kind of goes over some of what I talked about, just tokenomics, CAD token, stuff like that. Again, yeah, very standard for a perpetual exchange. So getting into the more Symphony stuff, this is what we're hoping to launch in Q3. So this is what the team has built. All right, I see first question, perpetual. Perpetual basically just means you can trade these assets at a certain leverage. So if I pick like, let's see, say I pick Ethereum, I can trade Ethereum up to like a 45x leverage. So for example, if I have like 1 ETH, I can basically trade with the power of 45 ETH, and that'll last like infinitely. So unlike an options trade where there's like a deadline or the trade expires, a perpetual doesn't expire. So you could, put in 100 Canto as your collateral token. That's like what you're paying with. And then you're trading leveraged ETH. And then you can let that trade last as long as you want. So you could theoretically have like a leverage long trade on Canto, for example, and just hold it for weeks on end as you wait for the price to go up. So that's basically a perpetual. It's more of a crypto-centric term, but it's just similar to options or derivatives trading. Happy to send links as well or anything like that if that would help you. Yep, yeah, leverage slider here. So yeah, again, just lets you trade with more money than you basically have. You just need to be careful whenever you trade with leverage, then, you do have a liquidation point. So if, I have, let's see like a Canto example. If I have, like 1 Canto, you can see if I put the leverage at 2x, I'm trading at 1.98 Canto. There's a slight discrepancy here just due to fees and stuff like that. But basically I only have 1 Canto and it's basically giving me 2 to trade with. So that's all leverage is. And you can see as I adjust this tab, it's a different amount. So these are just like the leverages I can trade with. Cool. So that would be perpetuals. And let's go more into Symphony, and we can also talk about perpetuals there and make it like pretty clear. So the reason Symphony came up is right now you see we have this perpetual exchange and it exists just on the Canto network itself. What we wanted to come up with was a way for people to trade perpetuals across chain and do it near instantly. So say you're currently, on Canto or whatever, and the token that you want that exists on Polygon. We're building a system that essentially lets you to, create the trade on Canto, say I execute this, and that trade gets executed on Polygon near instantaneously. We're doing this with something called Intent-Centric RFQ Architecture. So it sounds kind of complicated, but all an intent is if you're on, say, network A, it could be Ethereum, Arbitrum, whatever your network is. And you basically say, hey, I want to make like a trade of this asset. And, I don't really care where it happens. I just want the best price and the quickest execution. You basically signal that, hey, I want to trade Ethereum at a 20x leverage. And then solvers, who are basically, you can think of them as like high frequency traders, people like that. Solvers go out and they find where the best price for your asset exists. So they could come back to you and say, hey, like for an Ethereum trade, the best execution actually exists on Arbitrum, or it actually exists on Polygon. They return that to you. You basically sign that transaction, and then that trade gets executed on that network. And then you basically still own the trade because it's based on the same wallet you're using. And I think Beethoven can get a little more into account abstraction-based wallets later. But you basically own that trade, and it exists on different networks. So I know it kind of sounds a little bit complex. I think what might help is we kind of have a flow down here that goes through each step of the process. And I guess I can turn over to Beethoven if you want to go through the flow a bit. I think that helps, clear up some of the questions about it sometimes.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, it sounds a little bit complicated, but I think once I walk through it, it'll make more sense, hopefully. And then if anyone has any questions, feel free to just throw them in the chat, and then I can go ahead and answer them. Yeah, also, Mozart, you want to just throw the link in to the chat, I guess, while we're going through it? Sweet. Okay. Yeah, so as Mozart mentioned, this is like intent-based symphony flow. So he kind of went through the high level of what happens. So I'm going to break it down sort of into the steps that you see over here in the diagram. So the first step would basically be the user comes onto the platform and they submit their intent, right? So what that means, as Mozart mentioned, is it could really be anything, right? Like, let's say you're on Ethereum mainnet and you want to open up an ETH position at 10x leverage. And the whole idea is sort of to abstract away the notion of like different chains, right? So for you, you just want to open this 10x leverage, but you don't really necessarily care unless you specify which chain it's actually opened on, right? So when you submit this intent, it's sent to our solver router smart contract. So that's step number one. And when you submit that intent, what it does behind the scenes is it emits an event, right, with the intent that you submitted and a specific intent hash and a bunch of other information like the timestamp. Then what's going on after that is there are going to be solvers that are basically listening for these intents, right? And we'll have our own in-house solvers, but basically anyone can be a solver as long as they stay CAD in our protocol, right? So any of you guys could be solvers if you're interested in that. I think there's a lot of creativity there because I see that as like an opportunity for people to implement like machine learning and other cool strategies to basically find the user the best solution, right? So once that intent is submitted, the solvers basically begin competing to find the best solution for the user. And there's many different variables they could consider, right? Obviously, they have to find an exchange that has the asset the user wants along, but they could consider liquidity across different chains. They could consider fees across different protocols. They could consider slippage. There's many things they could consider, right? Also, the prices are always slightly varied across different chains, different protocols. So there's a whole list of variables they can basically take into account in like their algorithm to find the best solution for the user. So I think that's like an awesome area. Is this, I see a question, is like automated bot trading? I think not exactly, but I think the solvers in a sense, I mean, are going to be different algorithms, right? So you could potentially create a bunch of different solver algorithms and sort of like have them compete with each other to find the best solution for the user. So in that sense, it's kind of like an automated bot, like the solver algorithm itself. But yeah, so that's basically sort of like the solver step, right? So now we're kind of moving on to step 3. So now the solvers all present these solutions and they present it to the Symphony IPE. And what that is behind the scenes is basically like a backend like algorithm that we have that's going to go through all these solutions that have been submitted by these solvers. It's going to run some sanity checks, make sure they're authorized solvers, make sure the protocols actually exist for the solutions they're basically providing. And then what it's going to do is basically pick the top 3 solutions based on the user's weight of different variables they consider the most important. And then it will basically present these 3 solutions to the user, right? So from the user's perspective, they just submitted their intent, they wait like a second or two, and then they're presented with these 3 different solutions, which is basically, you know, which protocol they're going to open their long on and how many fees they'll have to pay and some other important information. And then with that information, the user actually selects this solution that they find to be the most desirable. And then the solution is directly submitted onto the destination chain. And this is all done, by the way, like via account abstraction, right? So in a traditional system, a user's externally owned account, or basically your wallet address, is just directly interacting with the protocol. But in an account abstraction system, rather than the user directly interacting with the protocol from their externally owned account, they actually interact via something called a smart wallet, right? Which follows the ERC 4337 standard. So I recommend looking into that because it's really interesting. So yeah, this basically means that the user has like a smart account that we actually deploy for them on every chain that we'll be interacting with. So their first transaction via their smart account will deploy their smart account if it doesn't already exist. But the overall like beauty of this is why it's so important is that obviously externally owned accounts are just addresses. So we don't have any ability to program like customizable logic for an externally owned account. But with smart accounts, because they're smart contracts, now as long as we basically inherit the standard, the 4337 standard, beyond that, we can basically implement whatever custom logic we want, right? Which is super important for the step I'm getting to now. So when the user submits the solution, or we submit the solution on the user's behalf via user operation, which is signed by the user's private key, this goes onto the destination chain. And then what it basically does is it allows the solver to actually open the position on behalf of the user, but with their collateral. But yeah, so it's basically the user is able to open their position with the solver's collateral, right? But it's still done like on behalf of the user's smart account wallet. So it sounds a little bit confusing, but basically what's happening is we now allow the user to open a position on a chain where they basically had no collateral because the solver fronts that collateral. But it's obviously we have a lot of checks in place where the solver signature is verified. So there's no way to just steal collateral from other accounts or anything. There's a variety of checks that are performed, and I'm happy to go a little bit deeper into it if we want. But at a high level, what's happening is the solver is fronting collateral for the user to open a position on the destination chain. So then once this happens, the final step of our flow is a callback via like cross-chain communication primitive, whether it be layer 0 or Axelar. We basically send back a Boolean value, so it's true or false, about whether or not the position successfully opened. So if the position did successfully open, then the solver will be able to basically unlock the initial collateral on the source chain. And if the position did not successfully open, then the user will be able to just re-unlock their initial collateral on the source chain. So I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I should have. In the first step of submitting the intent, in addition to specifying like the parameters the user wants, they also have to lock up the collateral they'll be using. So by locking up the collateral to open up the trade on the source chain, they're basically ensuring that the solver would be able to basically be paid back for fronting the collateral on the destination chain if the position is open successfully. And if it isn't open successfully, then the user can simply, because of that Boolean value that's sent back, the user can simply just unlock their initial collateral, and it's not an issue. But yeah, that's like the overall flow. Maybe it was a little bit confusing, but yeah. Anyone have any questions about that? Like if you have any questions, let me know in the chat, and I can dive deeper into like any specific part. Even if you want me to go like deeper into like which smart contracts are involved and stuff. There's a lot of like cool features that we're implementing, right? So another cool feature, like I mentioned, the user has to have a smart account on every chain, and we actually deploy it for them if it's their first transaction. Another cool thing that we're doing is we're deploying the user's smart accounts using the create2 opcode, which basically means that the user's address for their smart account will be the same on every chain, which is really important for the flow because we wanted the addresses to be symmetric, which means that we check on the source chain that it's coming from the same address on the destination chain, which ensures that it's the exact same user, which makes things a lot like simpler. That way we can make sure that the callback sent via layer 0 Axelar can be trusted because it's coming from the same address that initially requested the user or requested the intent. Also, the whole idea of like fronting collateral, right, for the user on behalf of the solver itself is also like a pretty new concept because in account abstraction, there's like a notion of a paymaster, right? So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but another great thing about account abstraction is that it allows for gasless payments, which basically means that if you're a user and you have a smart account address, you don't need to pay you don't need to necessarily have native gas on that chain, because these paymaster contracts basically allow us to pay for the user, like pay for the user's native gas. And obviously, like, they may be paying in some other way, maybe like through another token of their choice, or potentially down the line even pay for gas in fiat. But basically, like, at a high level, they don't need to necessarily have native gas because the paymaster contracts can sponsor that for them. So in a similar way, the user doesn't need to have any tokens on the destination chain to open a position, because the solver will have a contract that we call the solver paymaster contract, which acts similarly in that it basically fronts collateral on behalf of the user. So the user doesn't need to have any collateral on the destination chain, which is solving a huge issue because it's really, at least now, super cumbersome to bridge assets between different chains. And it basically makes, in the current state, it's pretty much impossible to capture like a perpetual trade at a certain price, because bridging takes a long time, not to mention figuring out all the bridging. I mean, it could take up to like 30, 45 minutes, even over an hour. So this is basically bringing that time down to like seconds for the user, and, you know, utilizing account abstraction and a few other like novel innovations. So yeah, we're super excited about it. We basically like implemented the basic flow, and we're going through testing and stuff. So yeah, and we know it's definitely possible because we've tested it and stuff, and super excited about it. Happy to answer any questions, or Mozart, if you want to add anything, just let me know.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think that covered the flow really well. I know we got a bunch of questions in chat. I've been trying to keep up with them. Yeah, Paul, real quick on yours, another way to pay gas is, yeah, there's kind of two things going here. The first one is non-native gas payments. So I gave the example about, you know, say you're brand new to crypto and someone just gives you a fresh wallet USDC. A big pain point in crypto UX wise right now is someone just gives you this wallet USDC. Well, you can't really do anything with it because you don't have ETH in that wallet to actually make that transfer, right? And that's like a big UX barrier. So it solves that, because you can, whatever token you have, we can accept that as gas payment, because someone else will basically take that token and pay for gas. Another thing we're exploring is, again, we're trying to make this super retail, you know, first timer focus for some of this, like kind of getting some of this stuff very simple. They don't have to worry about bridges and stuff like that. I think we're going to have a program where for the first, you know, couple months or something, we'll probably just front the gases for everyone, the gas payments, which again, we can do with Paymaster basically, so that they can, you know, trade like that and then not have to worry about gas, just to kind of get started, you know, so we don't like lose a lot of people who aren't as crypto native and, you know, understand how things like that work. Let's see. Another cool thing, I think Beethoven, you touched on it, but a thing I really like is a lot of time, kind of like during our investor calls, we get the question that, you know, you have this very complex seeming flow here. What happens if someone wants to, you know, exit their position? Do they have to go through this flow? What happens if, you know, like all of Symphony, this whole thing here just goes away? Is everyone's positions locked? Well, the cool thing is, because we're using account abstraction, as Beethoven mentioned, which is just like smart contracts as your wallet, you control that wallet at any given time. So when a solver basically opens up a position for you, it's done under your wallet address. So you could theoretically skip Symphony, go directly to whatever chain your position was opened, and you can close it manually yourself. So it's a pretty cool way that you kind of have full control of it. So the system is purely like decentralized in nature. And that feature there separates us from a lot of competitors. So a few other players doing this in the space are trying to attempt something on, you know, say like a centralized exchange and stuff like that. Whereas everything done here is, you know, via smart contracts, and, you know, at no point do you give up custody over your keys. So I think that's pretty important. I guess, so I think that covered the architecture pretty well. And I think we also kind of covered AA. I think where a lot of like the help we could use, or a lot of cool like projects that I'm kind of seeing, and then how I'm thinking about, you know, how people are saying in the chat, is kind of the solver network. So when a solver basically runs their algorithm, they basically have an event listener. They pick up that someone's trying to make a trade, and they're now like, okay, I need to go out and scan all these different blockchain networks. You know, for starters, a bunch of different EVM type networks. And based on doing that, their algorithm's going to return, you know, the most optimized solution. So the algorithm basically that can return these optimized solutions is where a lot of creativity can occur. We have like a division kind of within Cadence like just focused on that. So just building out solver algorithms, but again, it's super open-ended, right? It's like, it could be different ML related algorithms. It can be AI. It can be, you know, any sort of like complex thing you can think of with different like weightings and different, you know, way to prioritize solutions of how it'll work. So just to give a little more, you know, when a user creates this position, they can set what their preference is for the position. So if they only care about execution speed, like it's a, you know, a big trade and they want it done fast, they can set that. And then solutions from these solvers are prioritized based on execution speed. If they care more about just the lowest gas cost, then again, maybe solutions that are more geared towards like an Arbitrum or, you know, more efficient L2, then those solutions will be prioritized. So there's kind of a lot of variables that go into play, and that's kind of what makes it pretty interesting and pretty open-ended for these solvers to return solutions. And yeah, that's like a lot of the area where we're doing a lot of research, and you know, we want any way the community can help in that research or projects built on that, we think is pretty cool and pretty helpful. So I know we're at the top of the hour. I'm not sure how much we have allotted for this total, but yeah, open to any more questions, anything else you guys want to know about.
I guess I'll give it a couple minutes if anyone has any questions in the chat. But if people have questions later on, and this is my favorite question to ask at the end of workshops, are they able to get in contact with you guys? I do believe Vivaldi as well has been quite active or is able to answer questions too. What's the best way?
Yeah, so we have a Discord channel, and if people just want to open up a ticket in Discord, Chopin on our team is really good at, you know, triaging the questions and getting them to the right person. So yeah, I would recommend go to Discord and just open a ticket, and we'll be happy to help there.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you have a link for that you'd be able to drop into the chat?
Yeah, I think there should be. Let's see. Awesome. Yeah, that should be it.
Yeah, perfect. Amazing. Okay. Well, cool. If no one has any other questions, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you both for speaking and walking us through all of that. I think it was a really good introduction for those of you new to DeFi, which I think I saw in the chat, or, you know, those who just had some questions and wanted to know more. But yeah, great. Thank you both so much for coming along. And to everyone in the audience, thank you for stopping by. We will be having our next workshop, I believe, next week on Monday. So please stay tuned for that. And as usual, I will be posting all information in the Telegram group and on our Discord as well. So please watch out for those. Cool. Well, I won't keep you guys any longer. So thank you all so much once again. And we will end that session here. Right. See you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Bye.